Welcome to ScoliTalk.
So welcome to ScoliTalk. Thanks for viewing today. So I have Dr. Clayton Stitzel, and he does an exercise-based scoliosis treatment program right here in Pennsylvania, ScoliSMART, PA. So today I am here and we have gathered questions from my fellow Scoliosis Warriors, and we are going to ask your questions to Dr. Clayton.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. We did a nice little video blog there a couple months back over in Missouri.
Yep.
And that was really great and wonderful, and I look forward to the opportunity to answer some of the questions from the Warrior group here straight on here. So.
Oh yeah. We have a lot of people who are very excited.
Remember, it's a fine line between being famous and infamous. Just keep that in mind.
Right. But first, before we start, Dr. Clayton actually just wrote a book. So I was going to have you tell us a little bit about your book. It's called Roll That Rock, a leadership book not for corporate America.
Right. Hey, wow, the plug in the beginning is to the end. That's great.
Hey.
So anyway, here's what the book looks like. Here, the cover. You can see we have this kind of quirky little people, cartoon type people here. It's referred to as Roll That Rock, a leadership book not for corporate America, which begs the question, who is it for? And basically, I've been a part of a lot of civic groups and nonprofits and things, and these are really great people who are doing God's work to make the world a better place, and sometimes they're really struggling. So these are people who we start recognizing that are very successful in the corporate and business world, but that sometimes doesn't transfer over into the nonprofit and the volunteer Lions Club kind of world because they run very differently. Different type of governance, there's no accountability, limited resources, there's a variety of things. So we looked at all those things and we started looking at what types of people do we find in these groups who become the team members who help the leader roll the rock. So we have Matt the Martyr and Scott the Squatter and Lee the Leader and behind the scenes Bob and Missy Misguider. And each one has their own little imperfections, okay? And they're being led by imperfect leaders. But with the right leadership and the right direction, we can start helping those people use those imperfections to be the greatest rock rolling feature. For example, Missy Misguider could be a great rock roller if we just continually redirect her. Behind the scenes Bob, great rock roller. Not the way I would do it, but it seems to be effective, so we let him do his own thing. Scott the Squatter can be a great rock roller as long as he knows what's in it for him. Okay, so the whole story here goes through and talks about how they learn to work together as a team. We have professional commentary on different parts of the leadership model, referred to as Women's Wisdoms, as you can see through here. That. And it's a fun little book. It's about 116 pages, about an hour read at tops. It's just designed to be cute and fun and casual, but still to show people how they can lead the individuals in their group and become actual leaders instead of just appointed leaders.
Oh, very cool.
Okay, and the plug.
Read it.
And the plug. So anybody who wanted to get a copy of the book, I do signed author copies through rollthatrockbook.com, and of course it's available on ebook and regular purchase on Amazon.
Awesome. I'm waiting to get mine. I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited. All right, well, let's jump in here. So we have Warrior Terry W., and she would like to know, how and when did you develop such a passion to work with scoliosis?
So scoliosis is one of the things as a chiropractor. It's kind of like the curing cancer for our profession. If you can treat this, you can treat anything. So we had a really keen interest on it. Palmer College of Chiropractic, where I graduated from, actually has the largest osteological collection of scoliosis spines. So we used to, Dr. Morningstar and I used to sit there and go and study them, all the different things with that. But my real passion came from when I started dating a young girl who had scoliosis, and I saw the impact that it had on her life, on every decision she made and everything involved. So when you took it out of the clinical realm and made it real, we attached it to a real person that you knew and cared for and things, and saw the impact it had on her life, it really did make you want to help and find a better way. My relationship with her didn't work out, but that's okay. It's not how it always works. But my interest in scoliosis remained.
Awesome. Well, I can certainly relate with that, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers can as well. So
I would think so.
Yeah. And so the next question is from Denise C.
You know who you are.
Yes, you know you are, Denise. Who is responsible for your wicked sense of humor, coupled with your drive and very committed work ethic?
You know, I have been very fortunate of having some really great people in my life. I have the two best parents you could ever hope for, who've followed me down a lot of crooked roads and never questioned or told, I told you so when it didn't work out. Grew up in a great town. I played football for a very strict program where we learned a lot about leadership and a lot about how to roll that rock, if you will, and get things done as a team. But at the end of the day, you know, you just kind of come across people in your life, and a lot of times they have a pearl of wisdom, and the trick is recognizing that when you see it.
Yeah. Did you grow up around this area?
I grew up 4 miles from here.
Okay.
And my home is actually still back in my hometown, and only about 2 miles from where I grew up.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Sebastian S. Would like to know how hard was it beginning ScoliSMART? Obviously, it takes a lot of drive and hard work to start something new or different. So.
Obviously it was very difficult in a sense. We were actually transitioning out of, we were working with a previous organization, so we were transferring out of that organization into ScoliSMART. You know, the effort here was that we wanted to create something that was the most comprehensive approach to treating scoliosis. We didn't want to just be another niche. We wanted to be the all-encompassing kind of thing. So we looked at it from a dynamic rehab perspective, a static, isometric perspective, through the neurotransmitter stuff. We've now branched out to genetic variant testing. We're going to be doing some hormone testing here in the future. We have the bone metabolism testing going on. So we really wanted to create something that was just going to broaden out the entire model of treating scoliosis. And in order to do that, we needed to create something that was just from scratch. We couldn't try to convert the existing thing that we already had, so we started all over again, but it was one of those start, end in mind kind of things.
Well, it's pretty awesome.
And it was extremely hard.
I can imagine it was. I can imagine it was.
It took a lot of time, money, and a lot of prayer.
Now we have some questions on sports.
Great.
Okay. So, obviously, I think that's a common question that we hear a lot within the group. Parents wanting to know what's good, what's
completely
not.
reasonable too, yeah.
Yeah. So, Warrior Anita T would like to know which sports can cause curve progression, and is it the same for children and adults?
Okay, that's great. So when we talk about the spine and spinal muscles, we have two groups of muscles. We have intrinsic muscles of the spine, and we have extrinsic muscles of the spine. So the extrinsic muscles are muscles you've heard of, like the trapezius. So that connects to your spine, but also connects to your shoulder. And human beings have voluntary control over those muscles. So I can take my shoulder and do like this because I'm making it do that, okay? It doesn't do that on its own. Now the intrinsic muscles, these are muscles you've probably never heard of, like the multifidus, things like that. These are muscles that connect from one spinal level and attach to another spinal level. They don't attach to anything outside the spine. And these are muscles that human beings don't have voluntary control over. Okay? So they're controlled by your brainstem. That's the part of your brain right here at the base of your skull, and it controls all of your automatic stuff. Your breathing, your digestion, your heart rate, whatever. There's a reason why human beings can't wiggle 3 vertebrae by thinking about it. Okay? So all of the motion you do with sports and things are all actually going to be involving the extrinsic muscles that you voluntarily control. They actually got very little impact on scoliosis itself. Okay? Now, in terms of activities that you may want to avoid, it really has to do with curve pattern. So there is some evidence showing that hyperextension, like a back bend, bridging, okay, like doing gymnastics and things, repeatedly can actually flatten the thoracic kyphosis, which then can make it easier for the spine to want to twist. So that's one thing there. In terms of thoracolumbar curves, they're a little bit more susceptible to compression-related forces because they don't have the rigidity of the rib cage. Gotcha. So in those situations, they're high impact kind of landing type things. And even jogging, it depends on the surface. On the road or sidewalk, maybe not preferable. On an all-weather track or a treadmill, probably okay. So it's about the surface, it's about the impact. And again, in situations where we have not a whole lot of young ladies are doing power training and weightlifting and things, but we do have young males who have thoracolumbar curves, and sometimes you may want to avoid compressive, heavy weightlifting in terms of deadlifts, squats, things like that.
Right.
Because again, that rigidity isn't there with the rib cage.
Got it.
Cool.
What about someone, Nico S, would like to know, what about someone who's had surgery and they have rods?
So fusion surgery.
A fusion surgery. They love sports. I guess they haven't gotten the surgery yet, and they're wanting to know, can they do sports after that? They're hesitating with the surgery.
I understand. No, and you know that there's a lot of variables and factors to be able to answer that in a yes or no manner.
Right.
It depends on the number of levels. Depends on the location. It depends if it extends into the lumbar spine. There's no good one or no answer. My best advice is, if that's a concern of yours, you really probably need to talk to your orthopedic surgeon and have a very detailed conversation with him about the pros and cons of what this is going to be like. It's going to be like after the surgical intervention.
Yeah, because obviously they're not going to have the same mobility.
Most likely not, but you know, if the fusion is only contained into the rib cage area, it's going to be a lot different than if it's extending down to the lumbar.
Got it. Okay. And do children with hypermobility have any extra sports to avoid to prevent curve progression?
Again, same type of thing here. Avoid the hyperextension of the mid-back there in thoracic curves. Avoid the compression on the thoracolumbar curves. I wouldn't be overly concerned about one-sided sports or swimming or anything of that nature. That wouldn't be really overly concerned, because again, they're going to use the extrinsic muscles, not the intrinsics. So it's just intrinsic muscles that are really kind of being affected by scoliosis.
Got it. So we have some questions about scoliosis treatment in general.
Sure.
So Nancy B, and I'm going to go with Jeannie S. They want to know what treatment options are available for those over 60. One in particular wants to know, besides the suit, the other one just wants to know treatment options.
Sure. So again, going back to, there's a lot of different variables. If the patient does not have a spondylolisthesis, which is a spine slip in the lumbar spine usually, there are definitely more options than with not, and that sort of thing. We also see bone density. Bone density testing and in terms of bone metabolism is really critical in terms of treatment options for postmenopausal patients with scoliosis, especially if they have a lumbar curve. Okay, so when we talk about treatment options here, yeah, we can still apply much of the boot camp type things. We just had a patient who's 65 years old go through boot camp last week. She did great. But again, you're going back into curve pattern, you're going into with without spinal listhesis, you're going into is there normal or abnormal bone density. So my thing would be focus on the clinical things in terms of the bone health. It's fine to do the suit. That's perfectly fine for, it's very non-invasive. And then if you're interested in doing boot camp, you probably need to do a phone consult with one of the ScoliSMART doctors to determine if that's probably the best course of action for you. You know, one of the reasons why we have a very high success rate is we're very selective about the cases we take. So if you're not a good fit, we're going to be able to tell you that right away.
Right. So there's a lot of different factors involved with each person's situation. They really need to get in contact with you.
Right. Yeah. And again, outside of the bone metabolism, you can definitely do the testing and start that process right away.
Got it. Anita T wants to know, does hypermobility make scoliosis more difficult to stabilize in children?
Okay, so when we talk about hypermobility here, I'm assuming she's referring to maybe a ligament kind of thing. Yes and no, it's a double-edged sword. So yes, in the sense that it doesn't give as much maybe stability, but no in the sense that it also gives you more flexibility to do more for them. So double-edged sword, yeah, double-edged sword is goods and bads, the positives and negatives to both. If it is a general kind of hypermobility, most kids, that's not a problem. If it's something related to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or something of that nature, that's a little different. That's a little bit harder to stabilize.
Got it. Okay. And Marcy G, hey Marcy.
We know who you are.
She would like you to talk about the process of deciding whether to treat a patient or not. How do you do that? And how would you refer them to other treatment options such as VBT?
Yeah. So when we look at the situation here, there's actually some pretty basic calculations you can do using the age of the patient, Cobb angle, and the Risser sign. And you can then plot that on a chart, okay? And that gives you kind of a risk of progression. Okay? So there are some situations there we've already looked at and said, hey, look, anything over a 3.0 on this chart, we're going to refer straight to VBT. Okay? Not that our program can't help them, it's just that the likelihood of that maintaining those gains is really probably pretty low. And so the likelihood of a long-term positive outcome Not going to happen. So that's kind of what we approach it here. In terms of a general acceptance of a patient, when you're talking to an adult patient versus the parent of a minor, two separate conversations there. What is our goal as an adult patient versus a parent?
Right.
Obviously, the parent, we're looking for halting curve progression, reduction whenever possible, trying to minimize any progression during growth spurts. Okay, so where the adult patient often it's a little bit more symptom related in terms of pain reduction, halting a further curve progression. In some cases, we can actually still get some reduction of the curvature, but that's kind of so a lot of the same goals, but there may be the priorities are kind of ranged a little differently in terms of 1, 2, 3.
Got it.
Fair enough?
Yeah, fair enough. Judy S. would like to know, can anybody actually cure their scoliosis? So go from, say, a 50-degree curve to a 0-degree curve?
Probably unlikely, because the soft tissue, what happens is when the patient develops a scoliosis curvature, the soft tissue all adapts to that curve. So the ligaments in the inside part of the curve grow shorter and thicker, the ligaments in the outside part of the curve longer and thinner, the bone starts growing in wedge deformity, the discs become wedged, the muscles become different in different sizes in terms of firing patterns and size and strength and things. So you have a lot of soft tissue, and the soft tissue actually kind of locks that curve in. So the goal here is to try to get that curvature to unlock as much as possible by relaxing the muscles, stretching the inside part of the curve, doing all these things you can do to increase curve flexibility, and then do the specialized rehab, the auto-response training that we do to get the brain and spine to learn to work together again and untwist. But to be able to unlock that spine of soft tissue from a 50 degrees down to a 0, probably unlikely in an adult patient.
Right.
And even in a patient into the later teens, probably unlikely. The key here isn't getting the curve to 0, okay?
Right.
The key here needs to be treating the patient and the condition to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I like that. So Andrea A, she pulled out all the stops with her question.
Oh, gee, right for the throat.
So Andrea's question is, what do you see the typical treatment being for detecting and treating scoliosis 10 years from now, based on all the research you're gathering?
Okay. Well, first of all, the word typical and scoliosis should not be used in the same sentence. Okay. That right off the bat. Okay. So, so when we talk about adolescent idiopathic scoliosis, what it appears we're working with here is a condition that is primarily a neurohormonal condition that creates a spinal curvature as a primary orthopedic symptom. So there's really nothing wrong with the kid's spine. Okay, so what we're seeing here is this. We're seeing that it appears that the condition is organized on 5 different levels, as we were discussing a little bit earlier.
Yes.
There's a genetic level. Those genes then make either an enzyme or a protein variant, which we refer to as a substrate. And if you link a bunch of those substrates together, that creates a metabolic chain. And if you link a bunch of those metabolic chains together, that creates a body system. And if you link the 9 systems of the body together, that creates a body. We need to be able to test genetically where these variants are. We need to then be able to intervene with what those genetic variants can't do for themselves, aka supply the enzyme, supply the amino acid, supply the protein. Okay, we need to then be able to monitor on a metabolic level in terms of the range of them being high or low for any given metabolic chain that we're trying to, so we can adjust the dosaging higher or lower and that sort of thing. So the future of treating scoliosis probably has nothing to do with treating the spine. And it took
Go figure.
And it took 4 chiropractors to figure that out. So the irony is not lost on us by any stretch.
Right.
But yeah, so genetically, early identification, early intervention through nutrient therapies, guided by that genetic testing, and then being able to monitor them with the metabolic testing throughout growth.
Okay.
So that's the goal.
I like it. So we also got some questions about the scoliosis activity suit, which I am wearing right now. So first, before we go into those questions, can you explain what is the ScoliSMART activity suit? What does it do?
Sure. So the scoliosis activity suit here was actually developed by Dr. Mark Morningstar after he went through some training and things with kinesiotaping. And they were using the kinesiotaping as a supportive brace kind of mechanism. There were a lot of problems with that in regards that it had to be done very frequently, and the patient's skin became irritated and things of that nature. But it gave me the idea of being able to create a suit that can be put on and taken off in that fashion here, okay? And then the genius of it is that the suit actually anchors off the patient's leg, not their pelvis. This is really critically important because now you have an anchor point that's independent of the spine, and when the patient walks, that locomotion gets transferred into the suit, creating a torque response, which actually can get the patient's spine to learn to untwist itself while they're walking. So it's a complete innovative new thing. It's completely different than anything that's ever been done before. All the credit goes to Mark on this. He really did a great job on it. We've made some innovative tweaks and things like that in order to try to make it a little bit more user-friendly and things like that. But we've got it down to the point where we really feel that this is the product that's going to probably be the next big leap forward in being able to not only be coupled with our boot camp programs and things like that, which also work on that same auto response training mechanism, but also to open up an entire world of treatment options for adult patients who have been woefully underserved.
Right.
Woefully underserved in the world of scoliosis treatment. So you run into a situation here where we feel that this is going to that next step forward here that we can kind of build off of until the next big one.
Got it. So Mary Lynn would like to know, can a person with osteoporosis still benefit from and use the activity suit?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So that's perfectly fine. The suit is extremely subtle. The whole thing weighs maybe a pound total. It's not compressive. No, absolutely fine to use that with osteoporosis, no problem. Definitely recommend also doing, if you know you have osteoporosis, starting the ScoliStrong bone formula as well.
Right.
The thing about the ScoliStrong bone formula here that I think a lot of people are missing is it has, your bone is made up of a scaffolding, okay, like a netting, called hydroxyapatite, and what happens is the calcium stuff comes and attaches to that and gives it density. In patients with scoliosis, we see not only them losing the calcium and things and decalcifying, but we're seeing a breakdown of that scaffolding as well. So we're seeing not just bone density loss, but also seeing bone mass loss as well. And you can take all the vitamin D and all the calcium you want, if there's nothing to attach it to, it just comes sailing on by. Okay, so it's kind of like the equivalent of having a whole bunch of clothes and no clothes hangers. Just ends up on the floor. Even in a situation with osteoporosis or osteopenia, the early stage, that you can absolutely use a suit, but I would definitely continue to use the ScoliStrong bone formula as well, because the suit in and of itself isn't going to replace the bone mass and density, which are part of the curve progression problem. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Sorry that got long.
I'm sure most people appreciate it.
Fair enough.
So Laura H would like to know, I'm fused from T2 into the sacrum. Can I wear the scoliosis activity suit?
Yes. Okay, and that's great question. So Laura, thank you. Okay, so what we got going on here is when we developed the activity suit, it was originally developed with adolescent patients in mind. Okay, we started having adult patients who wanted to try it too, and we were like, why not? Okay, well, we got some curve improvement in a lot of the patients here, not quite as much as with the kids, but we definitely saw curve improvement with some of those patients, but more importantly and more surprisingly, they actually had dramatic pain improvements. The pain scales really lowered considerably, and we weren't entirely sure why until we sat down one day and kind of thought about it. We're like, you know what's going on here, particularly in the post-fusion patients here, is that the biomechanics are so altered that the muscle firing patterns are all messed up. So instead of everyone heaving, hoeing at the same time, okay, what we're getting is all the muscles kind of randomly just firing on their own. And what happens is they're slow twitch fiber muscles, so they go into a fatigue process that's intense, dull, achy, crampy, burny. That is a typical slow twitch muscle fatigue process. So what the suit does is when they are walking with the suit on, is since the spine can't twist and rotate like it normally does, the rotation from the suit, the reaction, actually aligns the spinal muscle firing patterns. So the top half of your spine will start learning how to fire against one another the way they're supposed to. So it starts reorganizing and realigning that. So when we see this fused spine pain syndrome here, it's probably actually not related to the fusion itself. It has to do with the muscle firing patterns going through a fatigue process because they're not working together effectively and efficiently. The suit's going to reorganize those firing patterns, and thus you don't go through the fatigue process.
Okay.
I hope that didn't get too wonky.
The answer is yes.
I feel like that got a little wonky.
Millie D, your question coming up. Can the suit help flat back syndrome?
Okay, so flat back syndrome here is, it can be done, I've seen it non-surgically and post-surgically, okay? So you may be maybe that different answers depending on which,
Their case.
Right. Given if it's a naturally occurring versus a post-fusion scenario. Scoliosis is a three-dimensional kind of problem. So yes, it can help flat back syndrome. However, flat back syndrome also tends to have things like head position, pelvic position, things like that also involved. So while the suit might be useful for that, it may not be the only thing that they need to completely solve the whole. It might be a piece instead of the whole pie.
Got it. Okay.
Fair?
That makes sense. And Joan S. Her grandson recently got the suit and is wanting to know, is it possible to overcorrect a curve with SAS because her grandson has a mild curve?
Theoretically, I guess, but boy, I've never seen it.
Right.
So theoretically, that's potentially yes, but it's not been a problem.
Got it.
Fair?
Fair.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. We have a bunch of just random questions.
Random is good.
Okay. Anita T, another question coming up. Will having pectus excavatum make any difference in attempting to straighten the spine and keep it from progressing?
Probably not. No, it's a completely separate issue, completely separate. Well, we do see that with scoliosis fairly, maybe a little more commonly than the general population. It doesn't seem to change the outcomes of treatment.
Okay. And fact or fiction from Shannon C. Scoliosis can cause fatigue.
Okay, see, you're trying to... There's nothing when you're talking scoliosis that's purely fact and purely fiction. There are a lot of things that can cause fatigue. We're finding genetic variants that are related to scoliosis that can cause fatigue. So that's one component. It's possible that some of our patients who have larger curves in 70, 80 degree range may be having some lung restriction. That can cause fatigue. There's true that there's a little bit more altered biomechanics, and it can take a little bit more effort to do some things. So that can cause fatigue. So there's a whole bunch of things that cause fatigue that have nothing to do with scoliosis whatsoever.
Exactly. Exactly.
So when we talk about scoliosis, the one thing we have to be aware of is something called spurious correlation. And we see this a lot. I see this a lot in the Warriors group and in other places. But there are two things that appear to be related to each other, but probably aren't. So a great example of this is in the summertime, it's hot, right? So ice cream sales increase.
Right.
Makes sense, okay? And it's because it's hot in summer. Unfortunately, drownings increase as well because more people are swimming. Okay, does that mean eating ice cream causes drowning? Probably not.
Exactly.
But they have something in common: hot summer.
Yeah.
Okay? So are they related? Yes.
Got it.
Related to each other? No. So
That was a good way to explain.
we have to be careful of spurious correlations when we talk about scoliosis and related to other conditions.
Got it. Yeah, that
Cool.
was a good way. Catherine B. Catherine, hey! She wants to know, what is the best way to convince a skeptical spouse of the full benefits of the ScoliSMART approach of care?
Okay, that's fair. Again, it kind of depends on what their hang-up is. I mean, if it's a money thing or travel thing, or they don't want to go against the recommendations and wishes of the orthopedic specialist or anything of that nature. Nothing about the ScoliSMART approach precludes them from doing what the orthopedic is asking them to do or recommending. So that it's possible to combine the two, although most people don't. From a skepticism standpoint of whether or not it'll work, I would say number one thing is do you want the most comprehensive approach? That's one thing. Second of all, get on the phone with the doctor.
Yeah.
Do a phone consult with the doctor and say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how our approach is different, and here's what it's going to mean for your child. But yeah, get on the phone, get on with more docs, and make an educated decision.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Hear it for yourself.
Everyone just needs to go through a discovery process, and that's fine. And we encourage parents to do that. The number one thing we want both parents on board, it's because there will be a bump in the road through this process, there always are, and we don't want them to jump the first sign of trouble. So it's really important to have kind of a buy-in from everyone right up front, so that the only people who get hurt on roller coasters are the ones who jump off.
Right.
So if we can get everyone to ride it out to the end, we're usually going to get through it pretty well.
All right. Okay, Shannon C, what are the risks of pregnancy with severe curves?
You know what? Pregnancy and scoliosis are one of the things that's actually quite well researched. I don't know why. Okay, and basically we find that there's actually very little complications and problems with carrying and or delivering with severe scoliosis and pregnancy. The two just seem to kind of coexist pretty well. There are some concerns regarding the epidural shots sometimes with severe scoliosis, particularly if it's post-fusion, because of the needle and hardware and things of that nature. But that seems to be the big
Well,
hang-up.
thank you so much for
My
the
pleasure.
interview.
Yay!
Yay.
Great questions, Warriors. I love it. It's really been the pleasure and honor of my life to start this group and to meet with a lot of you and have you join and have a place on Facebook where we can all come together here and sometimes we fight and sometimes we don't, and that's okay. But the bottom line here is just we're all in this together, guys, okay? And it can be done.
It can be done. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for joining us today. And don't forget, you can find us on YouTube under ScoliTalk. And don't forget to subscribe so that you're notified about future episodes. You can also find us at www.scolitalk.com. Have a good one.